All right, Jake Angeli-Chansley is here. Which I'm going to ask you about, Jake. You call yourself America's Shaman. The media dubbed you the QAnon Shaman. And before we even get into anything, I wanted to pick out an article. Since I used to be in TV news, I was in the big corporate press. One of those people who started to wake up to the fact that I really didn't know what I was talking about. Probably would have been somebody who just went along with calling you the QAnon Shaman too, years ago. I wanted to look at this article. You and I picked this one out. This was a recent one from the BBC. You said you did a 2-hour interview with them, and they took a couple quotes and basically wrote a hit piece. So before we get into your background and everything that happened, let's talk media real fast. Tell me about this. What was it like?
Well, I don't call myself America Shaman. I am a shamanic practitioner. My Twitter handle is America Shaman, but I'm not calling myself America Shaman. If anything, that is the way that I have been rebranded by people that understand this notion of being the quote unquote QAnon Shaman is something that is media fabricated. So
okay, but you have it in your title right now.
Well, no, that's my Twitter handle, America Shaman, not America's, just America Shaman. So I did that.
Why do you have it in your title? See, America '*S. Am I looking at it right? See? Just look at the title on your screen. Jake Angeli.
Yeah. So I'm doing that as an attempt to because basically it's about rebranding. I'm not the QAnon Shaman. The media called me the QAnon Shaman because that was what they used to create the straw man. Okay. So if anything, I am America's shaman. I am a shamanic practitioner. I have always said all throughout my shamanic practicing history that I am a shamanic practitioner. I don't call myself a shaman. So it's about rebranding. It's shamanic practitioner is a mouthful, you know.
Gotcha.
So the media dubbed me QAnon Shaman after Alex Jones called me the Q Shaman. And the reason the media dubbed me QAnon Shaman, and then they said that I called myself that, was because they needed to create a straw man. And they needed to be able to create a label on that straw man that they had already demonized. You see, Q and the Anons are two totally different things. So the media's creation of this QAnon thing is a complete fabrication and has no real grounds in reality itself. Now, yes, the BBC did a 2-hour interview with me, and they took a couple of quotes, short quotes from that 2-hour interview, and they turned it into this hit piece article. And this is what the media does.
Okay, let's go to the quotes. I am truly, truly repentant for my actions because repentance is not just saying you're sorry, he said. Repentance is apologizing and then moving in the exact opposite direction of the sin that you committed. In retrospect,
that's from the day of my sentencing. That's not from the interview I gave them.
Oh, here it is. Regrets only weigh down the mind, he told the BBC. They're like sandbags on a hot air balloon.
You see that right there? That's the picture they took of me during the interview.
Yeah.
I did a Zoom interview with them. So they did a 2-hour interview, and then they used that one quote, and I think maybe one or two others throughout this whole piece.
Okay, and are they trying to paint it like you just don't care anymore? Because right before it says, now more than a year and a half later, Angeli is out of jail early, and his remorse is gone.
Yeah,
so they're trying to say, like, you don't care. Okay. He told a reporter this month that he didn't do anything wrong and had been persuaded into an admission. So set the record straight. What's the truth?
Well, the truth is that my current attorney says that the plea deal that my previous attorney, Al Watkins, had me sign was a terrible plea deal. And my previous attorney told me this is the best that we can do. This is the best that I can do. And my now attorney, Bill Shipley, he basically said, Jake, I never would have had you sign this. You waive all of your rights to appeal. There's all sorts of stuff in here that is just absolutely nothing I would have my client sign.
Okay. Let's go back to this. when you say that, when you say in here that, let me go back to the quote that I read. Well, it's not a quote. They're saying he has since changed his mind. He told a reporter this month that he didn't do anything wrong and had been persuaded into an admission.
You see, so they're not quoting me, are they?
No. I think as time, this is a quote, I think as time continues to go on, I'm going to be proven to be on the correct side of history. So
yeah,
let's talk about that then. So when you're saying you were, when these are the quotes from court, I'm truly repentant for my actions, because repentance is not just saying you're sorry. Repentance is apologizing, then moving in the exact opposite direction of the sin you committed. In retrospect, I would do everything differently on January 6th. And then I go back down here and I read that they said you didn't do anything wrong. You've been persuaded into admission. What's the truth?
The truth
how do you feel about January 6th, I guess?
Well, as more and more information comes out about January 6th, and say, for example, the massive amount of federal agent presence in the crowd, as well as the way that the government is actually not technically doing their job as far as due process is concerned, as all this stuff comes out, what we're going to see is that there was massive government malfeasance, that there was massive amounts of suppression of evidence, or whether it be from the January 6th committee, whether it be from the media, or even in the case of the prosecution, basically handing all the defense attorneys 44,000 hours of footage and saying, find your client in here. This is all the evidence we have against your client. If there's exculpatory evidence, find it in the 44,000 hours of footage. That's like telling somebody to find a needle in 44,000 haystacks.
I just watched. Yeah,
go
ahead. Sorry. No. Go ahead.
Well, so to me, what it's about is holding the government and the media accountable, because they're in lockstep. And the narrative that they're trying to paint is that everybody that went to the January 6th protest is somehow a terrorist or something, and that's not the case at all. There was over 1 million people in Washington, D.C. on that day, and less than 1% of them have been arrested for violent crimes.
Okay, this is what troll with a purpose. The guided tours are entrapment. Super millions. It is kind of, I mean, it's funny but not funny when you watch that video, like for instance, the video that Tucker showed that you're talking about, that your attorney said he was not even aware existed, of what appeared to us watching from home, you being just escorted through like you were on a guided tour. Hey, maybe there's other video of people bashing through windows and stuff. I don't know. You tell me you were there. What was going on? I mean, tell us for your own point of view. Like, how did you enter the Capitol? What happened while you were there? What was the interaction with the police? Did you feel like you were in a situation where you were, I guess, trespassing in a way that could land you into prison for 4 years? Or did you feel like it was like, yeah, maybe things were getting out of control, but the police were going along with it, and we just figured, we're in the people's house, let's go check it out. Describe it for us from your point of view.
This is how the media has distorted things, and they've distorted things so heavily because of Operation Mockingbird, when the CIA infiltrated the media in like the 60s and the 70s to curb the anti-war movement and the civil rights movement. Okay, they have divided the country into warring ideological tribes, where there's people that believe January 6th was an insurrection and everybody that was there on that day is a traitor. And then there's other people on the other side that believe that it was a peaceful protest and all of these people are political prisoners. So now you have these warring ideologies, when in fact, the truth of the matter is it's a rather gray issue. Was there violence and chaos on that day? Yes, there was, especially on the outside of the building. Was there violence and chaos on the inside of the building? Not really, not the way that there was on the outside. Ashley Babbitt, from what I understand, was the only real casualty inside the building. I think there's maybe one other person that was a protester that was a casualty. There was several casualties of protesters on the outside of the building, either due to police brutality or to being crushed by the crowd. So the way I look at it is that the left side of the Mockingbird media is only showing people images of violence and chaos. And then the right side of the Mockingbird media is showing people the peaceful stuff that went inside the Capitol, went on inside. And now you have these two warring ideological factions butting heads with each other, and it's destroying the country. When it's kind of like if you were to hang a cylinder from the ceiling and you were to shine a flashlight on it from one angle, you would get a rectangle. And then if you shine it on the flashlight on, from another angle, you would get a circle as far as like the shadows are concerned, right? So one wall has a rectangle shadow, the other wall has a circular shadow, when in fact, it's neither a rectangle nor a circle, it's a cylinder. So what I'd like to do is try and help people to understand that January 6th, as well as many, many, many other things in the Mockingbird media, is these dueling factions of it's a rectangle, no, it's a circle, when in fact it's a cylinder.
I like that analogy. That's very interesting that you say that. Let's go back to this article then with that in mind. And you tell me before we move on to other stuff, if there are journalists watching and they genuinely want to understand the takeaways of what went wrong with the coverage of January 6th in order to do a better job in the future with the next thing that, they may, let's just say they're a well-meaning journalist. I feel like my heart was in the right place. I want to do the right job. I didn't have people say what you just said to me. There weren't managers who said to me, hey, this is the kind of propaganda that you're being used for, basically. And so you got to be aware of it and be more alert. What would be your advice to journalists?
I think Denzel Washington once said that it's not about being first, it's about being correct, or it's about being right. It's about being truthful. So the media at this point is more interested in being the first one to have the story, not the one that has the correct story. So I think that the correct story is always going to win and beat the people that get to the story first. Because whenever you react to something, you are likely to miss a whole lot of the truth that is this gray issue, or that is the cylinder. And all depending on what angle you're looking at the story from is going to dictate how it is that you see it. So I think part of what being a good investigator is about is finding the cylinder and not seeing the situation as a rectangle or a circle. That being said, we have to get rid of our confirmation bias. We have to get rid of seeing reality through a subjective perspective, but rather become objective and try to see things as they are. For example, in my case, the media said that I called myself the QAnon Shaman. They said that I was a failed actor. They said that I was delusional, that I was schizophrenic, bipolar, depressed, all sorts of stuff. None of that is true. Not a word of it. Never called myself the QAnon Shaman. Never acted a day in my life. Just because I had an acting profile online from like 2019 or something, which I also had a voiceover profile because I can do over 30 different voices and accents.
What's your favorite one?
The pompous British old fart, I suppose. I like that one a lot. But the thing is that if the media wanted to do their due diligence, if they wanted to find the cylinder, all they would have had to do was read the books that I had published prior to January 6th. All they would have had to do was watch the videos that I had posted on Rumble, because they took down my Facebook, my Twitter, they took down my YouTube, they took down my Instagram, they took down all of those things after January 6th. But my Rumble channel stayed up, and so did my BitChute channel. All they would have had to do is watch those videos. All they would have had to do is read my book, and they would have gotten me as I am in all of my dimensions. But instead, they chose to create this straw man so that they could use my image to create a shock and awe campaign.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I was so remorseful, because my image was then used to divide the country. My image was used to sow fear in the hearts of millions. And that was not the intention whatsoever. That was not what I'm about at all. I'm about unity. I'm about peace. I'm about love. I'm about freedom.
I'm going to ask you in a second, Jake, what you were about when you showed up to the Capitol on January 6, 2021. But first, are you a wine drinker? I don't know.
I don't drink alcohol.
Okay. Well, then don't worry. You don't have to go to Allison Wine Promo. Do you drink coffee? Probably not. You're probably not into caffeine either.
Organic coffee.
Oh, perfect. I have organic coffee. Okay, great. We'll talk about that in a second. All right, everybody. Don't forget, if you love this interview, you want to hear from the most censored people on the internet, one of the best ways to support my work is to go check out my sponsors and let them know that you appreciate that they don't bow to cancel culture and they don't tell me what to say or who I can talk to or any of that. If you're already a wine drinker, go get some wine that's way better than anything you're getting at the grocery store. These are all extreme altitude wines. One of the wines that we have now is Sunal Illogico. That's what you got to look for. Illogico, like illogical, Sunal Illogico. It's from the third highest vineyard in the world. These wines come from between 6,000 and 9,000 feet. They taste very good, in my opinion, because the grapes work very hard under the sun at these altitudes. I ski all back in Washington. In Florida, you can't really ski, except for in the water. But when we were living in Washington, I skied at about 4,000, 4,500 feet. So imagine being a grape suffering through at 9,000 feet to bring you the best bottle of wine in the world. So again, AllisonWinePromo.com, you get 50% off the wine itself and 50% off shipping. Since Jake also drinks coffee, no, he doesn't drink wine. So he just drinks coffee, but he does drink organic coffee. You can support my work by going to twinenginecoffee.com/Allison, USDA certified organic roast from Nicaragua. Light roast, dark roast, and there's also a Caturra tea. I drink the espresso in the morning with my raw milk lattes. And the tea I also love. It's a great summertime drink. I cold brew mine for 24 hours. It's the fruit that goes around the coffee bean. So twinenginecoffee.com/Allison, AllisonWinePromo.com. All right. So let's get to it. Since you were talking about what you're about and you listed all these things. What did you see yourself doing when you went to the Capitol on January 6th that day? And how did it apply to all those values that you just listed?
Well, I went to the second MAGA Million March on December 12th, and everything was peaceful. Everything was fine. I also did like a shamanic drumming and singing while I was there. What you got to understand is Washington, D.C. is built on electromagnetic ley lines. All of the buildings of power, the White House, the Capitol, the Supreme Court, the Lincoln Memorial, even the Washington Monument, all of these things are built on electromagnetic ley lines. And so these are in many ways like sacred sites. So as a shamanic practitioner, if there's going to be 1 million people or more in Washington, D.C. on these days, then it is essentially my shamanic duty to ensure that the highest vibration emotions and thoughts and stuff like that are plugged into the grid. It's kind of my shamanic duty to oversee the positive flow of energy within these ley lines. So by going on December 12th, which was peaceful, and on January 6th, which I thought was going to be peaceful, I was attempting to ensure that high vibrations were being plugged into the electromagnetic ley lines. I was also there to ensure that the collective consciousness of humanity was in one way or another positively influenced through the dissemination of true information to the people. So my regalia is, yes, designed to scare off evil spirits and create a cognitive shock to the cognitive system. But after that cognitive shock has taken place, people come up and they converse with me. And then I'm able to relay some of this information that can help the human species, help us save our country.
All right. So you're going there to do this, and somehow you end up entering the Capitol. How did that happen?
Well, the doors were opened and I walked through open doors.
Okay. And in your mind, were you ever thinking that this is what I'm doing is illegal? I'm not saying it
No.
should be illegal or not shouldn't be illegal. I'm just saying you ended up getting charged for it. I'm just,
Well,
I'm not
I'll
taking
put
a
it this
position
way.
on whether you should have been.
I put it this way. I never thought that they would come at me the way that they did.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw that coming.
So you kind of, did you know, like,
felonies?
I might be doing something kind of naughty, up there on the,
Well,
you
the
were in
thing
the
is
Senate?
that I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't vandalize any property. I tried to stop people from breaching the barricades. I tried to do everything I could to keep things civil and peaceful.
So, okay, right. So tell me, as you're doing that, what's happening? I'm sorry you've had to tell the story a million times, but I
It's okay.
want to get the whole thing. So you're thinking you're going in there to try to keep things peaceful. You're on this right. You want to go into the Senate, and I just heard them say you left a threatening note. That the note, I believe, said to Mike Pence that justice will eventually come or something. I don't think that's
It's
threatening.
only a matter of time. Justice
Okay.
is coming.
Right. Okay. But you weren't saying you were going to chop his head off or anything. That's the way they read it. Right.
No, that's crazy.
Well, that's how they made it sound, like you were saying
Oh yeah,
justice
of
is going to
course.
come, like it was like the guillotine for Marie Antoinette,
Yeah.
But that's not what you meant by it. What did you mean by
No.
that?
Time is on our side. Time is a great thickener of things. Like it said in the BBC article, what they kind of took out of context. I think I might have even said time is a great thickener of things. That's Abraham Lincoln, I believe. And I think that as we begin to get more and more and more information about what happened on that day, the presence of federal agents, the lack of security, the fact that Nancy Pelosi did not secure the building, the fact she was offered 10 to 20,000 National Guard by Donald Trump and she refused it, the fact that the feds had infiltrated the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys and they knew something was going to happen, all of these things unfold, the fact that they're not willing to release the video footage to the public because there's a bunch of federal agents on the footage, the fact that Antifa and BLM were in the crowd and they've admitted as much, all of these things are indicative of government corruption. And the government has been corrupt since before Kennedy's assassination. The same corrupt establishment and these families and these international corporate and banking powers that had Kennedy assassinated are the same international banking, corporate, and mafioso powers that are currently controlling Washington, D.C. as we speak. And not just D.C., but the Vatican, the London Palace, and pretty much every single country in the world that has a central banking system.
Jeff says, Allison, basically he was given a Capitol tour, seriously. Is that how you see it? Or do you feel like you're like, okay, I knew maybe I was doing something naughty, but I didn't think it was that naughty, like, I don't know. I just don't.
Well,
How
look at it like
do you
this.
see it? Because look, I mean, I think that people could make a valid argument for, this is something I don't understand. I'm trying not to take sides, trying to be very objective here. But one thing I don't really quite understand is why, if it's a public facility, you can't walk into it. Like, what was the crime? Was it because they were in session and it was disrupted? Like, it's very confusing to many of us who are sitting back thinking, like, it's a public building and you're charged with trespassing. Like, why? Because you impeded government process.
That's correct. So from what I understand, the barriers that were put up were barriers designed to ensure the sanctity and the safety of the individuals that were in the building performing the government official proceeding. So normally when you go into a federal building like that, there are checkpoints. You get searched, you get patted down. They make sure that they know who you are, etc. None of those things were happening as people were entering the building. So technically that is trespassing. Is it an obstruction of an official proceeding, if you look at the root of that statute in the law, then if I'm not mistaken, it was enacted around the time of what happened with Enron and the Enron scandal. So then this is what happens with the government when you give them teeth and claws. For example, the conspiracy charge. The conspiracy charge was created so that the government could go after the mafia. But now that the conspiracy charge is on the books, now it's on the statute, then the government has used the conspiracy charge to go after a bunch of really little fish as well, not just the big fish of the mafia. So when it comes to laws broken, the government can and will use what it is that they can to prosecute people, especially if those people are not on a certain side of the political spectrum. And they will also use certain statutes or whatever to their advantage if they're trying to get certain people out of trouble, like, for example, Hunter Biden. So there's something called prosecutorial discretion. That means that the prosecutor has the ability to be discreet or have practice discretion on what it is. They can discern what it is that they're going to charge somebody with. So in the case of Hunter Biden was photographed, and if I'm not mistaken, there's also video evidence of Hunter Biden holding a firearm, and there's photographic evidence of him weighing crack and screwing hookers. And in some cases, from what some people are saying, it's alleged that there's also evidence that he was having sex with children. So if there's all this evidence, but the government chooses not to press charges, what they can do is they can come to him with a plea agreement and say, we want you to plead guilty to lying on a federal form and tax laws. And all of this other stuff will go away, whether it be taking bribes, whether it be working with foreign agencies, whether it be weighing crack, whether it be being a felon in possession of a firearm. All of these things would get that anybody else decades in prison. But the prosecutor has the prosecutorial discretion to say, we're going to get rid of all of this if you plead guilty to this. And they also have the prosecutorial discretion to come at somebody and say, we're going to drop all these low charges and we're going to slam you with all these heavy ones. Does that make sense?
Yes. All right, Jake, before I'm going to cut the YouTube stream and we're going to continue the rest of the discussion on the other platforms that we're live on. I want to ask you though, before we cut it, were you at the Capitol on January 6, 2021 to take over the U.S. government?
No, that's
Okay.
ridiculous. That's absolutely ludicrous. And anybody that says that is peddling in propaganda.
All right. So it was not your intent to overthrow the U.S. government on January 6, 2021. Okay.
No.
Can you say you kind of already went through what you were doing there from it seemed like from what you would call it a shamanic standpoint. Is that right? Can you talk briefly though, from a political standpoint, what your concerns were that brought you there? Actually, you know what? Why don't you answer that question? Let's answer that question on the other platforms. Don't forget, everybody, you can support my work, and I'm going to show you how to follow Jake in a second. But if you want to put questions in ahead of time for interviews and become part of my editorial board, alismar.locals.com. We got a bunch of questions in for Jake. So thank you to everybody who supports me over there. If you want to follow Jake, let's just do that real fast, Jake. Okay, you're on Twitter at America Shaman. You have a link to Forbidden Truth Academy, right? Is there anything else you would like to tell people about before we go from YouTube?
Well, people, if they want, they can read my book, One Mind at a Time, A Deep State of Illusion by Jacob Angeli. It's on Amazon. It's only $9.99 and it's only 150 pages. If you really want to know what's going on in this country and in the world, I would highly recommend you give those 150 pages a read.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody who's watching on YouTube. We'll see you